Okay, I think we're gonna kick it off. So, welcome back to Globalizing Calgary Tech, Volume 6. My name is Jen Lucier. I'm the Director of Growth here at Platform Calgary. If this is your first time at a Globalizing Calgary Tech event, this is a monthly-ish speaker series that we run, that Platform Calgary hosts to celebrate, highlight, uncover, talk about issues that are happening in the tech community in Calgary and abroad. And today is definitely no exception. First, I'd like to start off this event and the conversations we're going to have today, centering it with our land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge Mohkinstsis, the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Yahe, Nakota, and Tsuut'ina nations. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, play, innovate, and build things on this land, and in doing so, honor and celebrate this territory. We have an incredible panel today of some women in leaders in technology in Canada and from Europe, from Europe. And I'm super excited to be part of and listen to the conversation of working, investing, growing businesses in tech and around the world. So very excited to get that going. If you do have comments or questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will definitely have an opportunity to get to those at the end of the session. And we're also going to have a networking session that's going to begin at 9:30 if anybody can stick around for that. Now I have the pleasure of introducing, welcoming the Honourable Doug Black, who's going to share a few words. Senator Black was elected by Albertans as a senator in waiting in 2012 and was subsequently appointed to the Senate in January of 2013. Prior to serving in the Senate, he practiced law and served as a board member or advisor to several Canadian businesses. He was appointed Queen's Counsel in 2002 and was named in 2012 as Canada's most influential lawyers by Canadian Lawyer magazine. Doug Black is co-chair on Platform Calgary's Advisory Roundtable. I've had the pleasure of sitting in on a few of them, and the experience and depth and color he brings to those conversations is always a treat. So thank you so much for joining us today, Senator Black. Over to you.
Jen, thank you very much for the introduction. And to everyone on the line, either good morning or good afternoon. For me, it's a real pleasure to be asked every month to kick this off and offer a thought or two. And today is no different. I welcome the opportunity to hear today's panel about women in tech. I want to share with you all that over my 9 years representing Alberta in the Senate of Canada, and the years before that, when I was involved in our community, I have observed that there is a changing face of leadership everywhere that I engage, whether it's industry or industry groups, whether it's the Senate of Canada, whether it's municipal or rural councils throughout Alberta, whether it's not-for-profits. I'm seeing a change in leadership. And this is a good thing. And it's a good thing because enhanced diversity, in my experience, leads to enhanced results. And not only, again, from what I have seen, do you get a better result if there are more voices, different points of view around a table. You're also more likely to get buy-in for whatever decision or product or innovation you develop, because the input is stronger. One would presume that the output should be stronger too. But I would say to us all that our journey, and it is a journey, towards greater diversity in all sectors of our community and our society is not over. In fact, I would argue that we're just over the beginning. And we have an obligation, all of us, to ensure that in any organizations that we're involved with, that we are hearing diverse voices. And particularly today, on the eve of our first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, I would just observe that First Nations Canadians and the First Nations voice is not represented anywhere near as fully as it needs to be for our societies to move forward, to improve problems that we have caused or certainly encountered in the past. And today's panel is an important part of this. It's opportune to focus on our move towards diversity by considering both the opportunities and the challenges faced by women in tech leadership. But I would hasten to add that I would presume much of what we're going to hear today about opportunities and challenges can be transposed to other groups as well, because I just want to leave my final thought is all of us must be committed to diversity in every group in which we engage, both on a personal or a professional level. And I think that that's an important challenge that we as leaders need to assume. As has been pointed out, we have a tremendous panel today, and it's led by a tremendous Canadian, Shelley Kuipers. As many of you would know, Shelley is the founder or the co-founder of the 51, which provides women-led capital for women-led businesses. But it's important to note that Shelley's been involved in early stage investing for over 20 years. And as those of you on the call know, who know Shelley, or those who don't, let me tell you, she is an important thought leader. She always looks at a challenge from different points of view, which is extraordinarily valuable. I would say also she's a mentor and she's a friend to many on this call, including myself. So look, Shelley, take it over. Thanks for this opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to learning things today.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I always love participating in these events. I'm fortunate that I have a few times now. I'd like to encourage the panelists to turn on their camera. If I could ask everyone to do so, that would be great. Thank you. It's great to see everyone. Catherine, Kelly, Kylie, Tess, welcome to our panel. I really believe in the power of storytelling and the storytelling that comes from each of us. So I would love to hear directly from you and have you introduce yourself, the work you do, and where you are based. That would be great. So Catherine, Kelly, Kylie, Tess, let's start with Catherine. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, Calgary. I'm coming to you from Berlin, Germany. I'm actually a Canadian with EU roots, and I've split my life between North America, specifically Canada, and Waterloo, Ontario, France, and Germany. And I spent 6 years from 2011 till 2017 working for the region of Waterloo in the economic development space, and then at the University of Waterloo in the Conrad Center for Entrepreneurship in the Faculty of Engineering. And so Canada is really close to my heart, but I'm also a proud European, which is why I returned for the second time to Berlin in 2017 to run the Factory Berlin, which is the largest community of innovators in Europe. But now I'm the CEO of Sovereign Nature Initiative, which is a nonprofit foundation building technologies, mostly Web3 and AI technologies, that are working on rebalancing the relationship between humans and nature. So we're also a community of academics, storytellers, and technologies using these Web3 solutions to move from a relationship of dominance over nature and separation from the natural world to a cohabitative relationship. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. I can't wait to dig in. Kelly, can you jump up next?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Shelley. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Schmidt. I'm the CEO at Benevidi, based here in Calgary. Benevidi is a B corporation and the market leader in global corporate purpose software. So we power employee engagement and community investment initiatives for many iconic companies, such as Apple, Google, and Nike. And our software is used to connect people with the nonprofit causes that they care about, whether it's to donate their time, their money, or just do a simple act of goodness or kindness. My journey to Benevidi started actually with an 8-year career in the oil and gas sector. And the main reason I made the jump into technology about 14 years ago was that I looked around the energy industry and really didn't see many people who looked like me in senior leadership roles outside of perhaps, the head of HR. And I remember the first tech company I joined, there were 10 people on the exec and 5 of them were women. And I think, diversity and inclusion has been a passion of mine ever since. And my career claim to fame is that I birthed 2 children while in CFO roles. So I look forward to sharing more on that when we dive in a bit further here. Thank you.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, Kelly. Kylie, good morning.
Morning, Shelley. It's nice to be here. It's good to see everyone today. I'm Kylie Woods, founder and executive director of Chic Geek. We're a nonprofit committed to building gender diversity in technology. And Kelly, some of what you were saying there really resonates with me, so I'm excited to get into that discussion. In my work with Chic Geek, we focus on retaining intermediate women in technology because we see this as the most vulnerable stage in the career cycle. We know that 56% of mid-career technical women are leaving, and this is twice as fast as their male counterparts, and half the women leaving companies leave technical fields entirely. So we're losing a lot of talent. And you pair this on top of not having enough women in tech to begin with, and it just kind of exacerbates everything. So Chic Geek's flagship offering is called Career Pathing, and we make hand-curated introductions for women in technology to grow their strategic networks and make meaningful connections with other women who are a few steps ahead on the same career journey. Through connection, we believe women will gain career visibility and the supports they need to stay in tech. So our programs are designed for community members, but we also work very closely with corporate partners because we believe that change happens at the intersection of company, community, and individuals. I'm based in Calgary and I have twin daughters, Lily and May, and they're 2.5 years old right now.
Okay, that's a lot. You've got a lot going on, but I'm a huge fan of Chic Geek, so keep going. Good morning, Tess. Great to have you here. Please tell us your story and kick off.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm Tess Van Thielen. I'm the VP for Advanced Services for Rogers for Business. My team covers off the IoT and data center portfolios. So my team really is in charge of driving the strategy, developing the offering set, and managing the end-to-end customer experience on those portfolios. I've been with Rogers for 16 years now, and I've had 17 different roles in 16 years and 2 mat leaves. And those jobs have spanned almost all of the divisions of Rogers. The only thing I'm missing is a little bit of Blue Jay time. So if the general manager is looking, I'm looking to fill out my full portfolio of Rogers at Rogers entities. I'm located in Toronto, and I'm married, and I've got 2 children. I've got a 13-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter.
Awesome, that's great. Well, thank you so much for kicking off with your introduction and your story. We've talked a little bit about women's participation in tech, and we've seen various levels of participation over time. Some of us have been in the industry for much longer than others. We're at the beginning, I think we were very much used to being the only one in the room, and that's really changing thanks to all the work that you are doing. But what got you into tech? So what gave you the bug to get into tech? And Tess, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'm an accidental technologist. I ended up in the tech industry purely by accident. I actually was traveling around Australia on a working holiday visa, and I had to try a bunch of different jobs and ended up working for Telstra. That was my last kind of placement when my work visa came in, and they said, you should stay here and work here. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And most of my career has been wonderful opportunities that, frankly, I've had to force myself to be brave and to embrace and to try and to take, and then found that I loved it. And all of the different, opportunities that I've been provided in technology, relished. And for me, what gets me super excited about technology, and I didn't really realize this going in, is how excited I was to see how technology can solve real world problems. And when you see, the opportunity of new advancements in technology coming, and you can see what it can actually do and how you can apply it, it's just for me such a rush. And it is, totally my jam, as I say. When we look to where 5G is going, and my team working on kind of really the new wave IoT stuff, we're working on really cool things like sending drones in advance of an ambulance with an AED, where we can actually try to have someone save a life in advance of the ambulance getting there in a rural situation. So we see that this technology can be really applied in real world situations for good for people, for good for society. And to me, that's super, super exciting.
Awesome. That's great. Catherine, tell us your story into tech.
Well, I love working in fast-paced environments. So I think the tech and innovation space is great for that. When we were used like tech as this, huge overarching term, but when I left university in '97 and I moved from Montreal to a small town in France, and I was working for a renewable energy company that was in the photovoltaic space. And looking back, I'm like, that's actually clearly a tech company. But now when I think of tech, I associate something slightly different, right? So also because I'm more in the startup space. But for me personally, I just love working alongside people who are constantly questioning the status quo, and they're often fearless. They've got this energy and optimism, and they want to see things come to fruition quickly, right? And so I think that this whole tech and startup space, specifically here in Berlin, where I'm located, is super exciting in that sense, because you just see these ideas sprouting out of the ground all the time. And the question is, how can you move these ideas forward? How do you get them financed? How do you, grow them? How do you attract talent to them and all these other things? And I mean, I experienced firsthand my first time like working in kind of like the new tech space, I'd say, was in 2006 when I moved from Munich to Berlin. And a friend who I had studied with said he's working for this incredible company out of Calgary. And this leadership team is amazing. And it's got this incredible investor, and you've got to join because it's just like this Canadian, like rah, rah, rah thing. And I was like, okay, sign me up. Actually, I don't even need to know anything. I want to join. I was really excited about the enthusiasm. It was called Veer at that time. And we grew it like pretty amazingly in a short period of time. And then it was sold to a huge digital asset management company, kind of in the Bill Gates portfolio. And it was a big success story. And I loved being along for that journey, just because it was this like, again, like every day you're questioning what you did the day before, you're pushing ahead and working in that type of environment, or even better, if you're a founder and you're like pushing that environment forward and changing the way that we look at the world and the way that we actually interact with the world. There's nothing more cool than you can do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you said, so it really resonates with me. Kelly.
All right, can I just ditto what Catherine said? It's funny to me because I talk on a lot about diversity in tech, and we certainly have a long way to go there. But as I said, I actually joined tech because I perceived it to be more diverse than the industry I was coming from. But also what attracted me to tech was just, by its nature, it's global, and, solving challenges of global growth. I think it really expands your horizons. It expands your worldview, and it's just really intellectually stimulating. And so, you also learn how to build great businesses, because you can go from being the market leader to pretty much irrelevant in a pretty short period of time. And so you have to continue to disrupt, and it really keeps you on your toes. And, that high pace of growth and that level of change is not for everyone, but as a person who gets bored easily, it's been something that has always gotten me out of bed in the morning for sure.
Love it. Kylie.
I think, to build on what all these amazing women have said, I want a career for myself that I never want to retire from. That's the kind of work I want to do, where I'm engaged and challenged and always learning. And I think tech is the place that will happen for me. I hear, Tess and Catherine and Kelly talking about their excitement for tech. And like, you meet people like this who are so passionate and dedicated and driven that it lights a fire in you too, and kind of motivates you to keep going. But I think technology, we talk about it like it's this single sector, but to Kelly's point, it is global. It touches every industry, so many different opportunities to help people and shape the world. And like, how do you not want to be a part of that? So just very exciting times.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's said. And, you know, we're kind of, you know, even though some of us have been in tech longer than others, I still feel like our participation is still very early. There's still so much upside to be had by our participation in technology and innovation. And so I would maybe throw that question out to you guys, you beautiful humans this morning. And just what is your perspective on that? Like, what do you think is the opportunity by bringing more diversity into tech? What do you see for the future, and what's the opportunity for everyone to capitalize on? Like, what would be your rally cry or your ask from companies to embrace diversity in tech?
I can jump in on that. I'm super excited about, you know, kind of the democratization of innovation and the democratization of development. You know, in the area that I'm working in, where we're really looking for all of those new innovative ideas and solutions and new developments in technology, we see more and more it's the smaller firms, the smaller organizations, where someone has this spark of an idea, someone has this incredible development that they want to build. And what I think we need to do as an industry is really rally around that and support that kind of an ecosystem where we are finding funding for those smaller groups, because, you know, there's a lot of people that off track out of corporate and start to build something for themselves, excuse me, because it gives them a little bit more control, they have a little bit more autonomy. And we're seeing the most exciting new developments coming from those smaller firms. And so I think it's up to different groups like Platform Calgary and, you know, the economic development agencies and, you know, the 51 to really help find and support all of those fantastic ideas. And I see the most diversity in those smaller organizations. I see, you know, the diversity of thought and the diversity of participants in some of those smaller organizations. And I think that's really the place that we can go to gather up some great ideas and great insights and really help them scale, you know, by leveraging some of those larger, more traditional organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kylie, any thoughts on that? You as a change maker?
I think, you know, consumers and communities they have higher expectations now about the companies they want to work with and they want to see, and they want to see companies that are reflective of themselves. And so I think companies that don't have diverse teams actually risk really falling behind. But I also think, you know, technology has the power to create some pretty great divides. And you know, there can be the technology have-nots versus the technology haves. And as technology changes so much quicker, that divide starts to widen. But by building intentionally diverse teams and companies, that we can actually stopgap that, because when we have diverse perspectives at the table, we make sure that other voices are heard and we're solving for different problems as well. So I think that diversity has the power to combat the technology divide as well.
Yeah, it's so true. Kelly, Catherine, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Sure. You know, in terms of a rallying cry, you know, at Benevidi specifically, you know, as a company, we are 51% female, and we're 2/3 at the exec level, and we're pretty close to 30% BIPOC as well, and 1/3 at the exec level. And those stats are really rare for tech companies. And, you know, we didn't get to those stats by setting targets. We didn't have targets at all, and we still don't. It's kind of about modeling the behaviors that drive diversity and inclusion. And, you know, I mentioned at the start, you know, my last company actually hired me to be the CFO when I was 6 months pregnant. And so I sort of waddled in and had 3 months to change some things. And then I took 8 months off, and then Benevidi hired me right after I had our second child, and they had to wait 6 months for me to start. And so what that really says is, you know, I had the good fortune of working with a couple of very forward-thinking male CEOs who actually were willing to walk the talk on diversity and inclusion. And I still don't know many companies today who would be willing to make a decision like that. But it's actually that kind of commitment and boldness that is needed to really drive change.
I completely agree. Yeah.
That's incredible, Kelly. It's amazing. I mean, and it's not that you were lucky. They're lucky to have you. I mean, clearly you're that good, and they wanted you come hell or high water, birth and all. That's fantastic. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said before. I think, you know, we need to lead by example, and we in these positions have the ability to put in place policies and procedures that foster that type of environment. But we have to actually do it every day as well. We can't forget. And so I think that the type of language we use, how we communicate, the environment that we create for our employees, but also for our business partners and anyone in the recruiting process is extremely important. And you need to be super mindful of that. And I mean, Canada is much more diverse and well positioned, I think, than Europe is. So we need to lead by your example. So I'm taking tips here.
That's awesome. And I think that was a really good rally cry around, you know, leading through example, doing the hard work, being the bold leader. What's your advice for, you know, this next generation behind us? Do you feel like, you know, they are challenging us to be better than we already are? Do you feel like there's some wisdom that you can impart on that generation? Is there any thoughts there?
I'm happy to take a swing at that one, Shelley.
Good, awesome.
So are they challenging us to be better? Oh, absolutely. You know, when I took over as CEO from Benevidi's founder earlier this year, you know, one of the things I remember him saying to me was like, Kelly, running this company for you is going to be way harder than it was for me these last 13 years, just because the expectation of our people is just so much higher. And it's higher in a good way, right? Like they're kind of all, you know, mini activists. Like they expect us to take a stand on issues of, you know, racial inequity and things like that. And so they push us every day. And so it's not enough for companies anymore to just, you know, be focused on profit. It's profit and purpose together, and they go hand in hand. And so I'm not so much sure, you know, how this ties to advice, but advice that I would give the next generation is probably mostly just get out of your comfort zone, right? You know, I find that women and other equity seeking groups are actually the most likely groups to stay quiet, like to not speak their minds, to not try to stand out. They're trying to blend in. And I was that way for the first half of my career. You know, I had very little self-confidence. I was scared to speak up. I was in corporate finance, so often the only woman in the room. You couldn't have paid me to do a panel or do something like this. And I would just say, go for it. You know, make sure your ideas are heard, and don't give up if you get stomped on a few times or you're not perfect, because it builds resiliency. Being resilient is probably one of the, you know, biggest qualities that leads to success for a career in tech, just given how fast things change and how fast things move.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, resiliency. I completely agree. You've got to have a thick skin for sure. Tess, tell us about Rogers. So you're in a very big organization. How are you driving change, or how is this next generation driving change towards, you know, diversity and inclusion in your company?
You know, what Kelly was saying really resonated with me. I mean, you know, having a son who's 13, and the conversations I have with him about gender roles, and he's back. I'll come home sometimes and I'll say, you know, I'll explain a story about how I'll say something in a meeting and it doesn't get heard, and then somebody else will say it and everyone will go, wow, Jim, great idea. And I'll be like, you know, and I'll explain that kind of scenario, which I think a lot of women have experienced and will resonate. And he'll just be like, how did that happen? To him, it's it's completely out of his thinking range that there are, female jobs or male jobs, or that there's people who would be better at it just based on their gender or the color of their skin. And so that gives me an enormous amount of hope, because I see that in younger people today. And I also do think that people entering the workforce today are taking a very different approach than I would have taken. And from what sounds like what Kelly was saying before as well, in the beginning of my career, I really did think that I needed to fit in. I needed to fit the mold of what was a successful telco executive or a successful technology executive. And so I spent an enormous amount of time and energy trying to act the way I saw success acting, moderate my behavior in a way, really, curb my enthusiasm, if you will, my natural energy. I tried to really contain it. And it was exhausting. It was tiring. And so I got to a certain point in my career, and I just thought, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I need to really embrace who I really am as a leader, and who I am as a leader is, quite an authentic and open person, but also I genuinely love what I do, and I didn't want to try and moderate that anymore. So I really kind of opened it up and let it out, and that really did have a huge impact on my career. And so a lot of what was holding me back was a little bit of me. I mean, there's some structural disadvantages that I encountered that I'm sure other people would suggest they've also bumped into in their careers. But for me, once I unlocked the passion, and once I unlocked my willingness to be authentically me and leverage my superpowers as a leader, that's when things really started to change for me career-wise. And so the one advice that I like to give to people is to be super brave. Like, there were so many jobs I was given that when I was given it, I thought, I don't think I can do this. I don't think that I have the skills for this. And then I thought, well, what's the worst thing they can do? I mean, I'll go try something else then. But I figured it out, and I did it, and I got the skill set that I needed. But you have to be pretty brave. But once you're brave, it really is. It can be very exciting, and there's really kind of no end in sight to where you can go if you can leverage those two things.
Catherine, is there anything you want to add?
Just, I think, when you're inquiring or starting to research the types of, company that you want to work for, you should look at all those aspects as well. Like, what type of D&I, focus do they have? What are their values? Do those values resonate with you? What does the management board look like? What do the investors look like? What does, the board look like? So you can do a lot of research ahead of time and be very inquisitive. And even when you're in that process of recruitment, you should ask those questions. That's important for you. You're going to be spending so much time, so many hours of your day working for an organization. You should make sure that you're not only a fit for them, but they're a fit for you as well. So I think it's important to be honest and also to be brave in that, especially at a young age situation when you're applying for jobs, that you communicate the values to the organization that you're working with and see if those actually mesh. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's just a smart business decision to have like a super diverse company. We all know this. There have been enough studies done. I don't think I'm kind of tired of like having to substantiate it. Like, the proof is there. Let's just get on with it and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that so many roles are reversing, like you're saying, evaluate the company just as much as the company is evaluating you. Mentor-mentee relationships. I sometimes feel like those are being reversed as well. It's almost like the mentor is now getting mentored by the mentee because there's so much to learn. And I love that, right? We're kind of breaking the status quo. Even an entrepreneur going out to seek financing, they need to scrutinize their investors just as much as the investors are looking at their company. So there's much more equity in these relationships, which I think is a really good foundation and a ground to drive diversity and inclusion. But let's get back into the heart of tech. We're all innovators in our way. What do we see for the future of tech? And so I think it would be really great to hear from each of you Tess, you talked a little bit about that before, you know, drones going out into rural areas to help save lives. But I'd love to hear your individual perspectives on where you see tech going. Where do you think are the greatest opportunities for innovation, and especially the role that women and diversity can play? So Catherine, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, there are so many directions. Right now I'm new in this role, and we're focusing on a lot of blockchain tools to see if we can revalue the value of nature, actually create a whole paradigm shift around the economics of our relationship with nature. So we're using these like tools that are really like ahead of their time, and creating use cases for them that you know will hopefully have application in 2, 3, 4 years time. I'm just kind of amazed by this community around the blockchain space specifically, the ideas that they generate, and the fact that they're all decentralized. Like it's like this very crazy dispersed community that is still very male focused, I would say, or male driven. However, I mean, we kind of missed the boat completely on diversity in, you know, the Web 2.0 and the building of the internet, with the exception of very few female leaders. And so I think that considering what I consider to be, you know, one of the most promising spaces out there, which is cryptocurrencies and blockchain, we cannot miss the boat on making sure that the people who design and code that future space have diverse backgrounds as well. Because if not, everything is going to look and feel and smell like the same it is today.
Yes, absolutely. No, I completely agree. Kylie, do you want to jump in? What are your thoughts?
I'm really excited about the opportunity that data has for us, and how, you know, from a Chic Geek perspective as a nonprofit, we are really committing to being data driven, and it is challenging us to be better in terms of our performance, our metrics, our reporting. It keeps us accountable as an organization, but it also helps improve our operations. So I love all the things that are happening that are very data driven. I also see a lot happening in the design and UX space, where we're designing technologies with a lot more compassion and empathy. And I think the experience we're going to be having with technology will be a lot more individualistic and customizable. And I'm excited about it.
Kelly, you want to jump in? What's going on at Benevidi? What do you guys have up your sleeve?
I don't know if I can share that, but no, I think maybe building on what Catherine was saying, technology is needed to solve some of the huge systemic issues that we have in the world, like climate change. Like we're not going to get to net zero and do what we actually need to do to save the planet without huge technological breakthroughs, right? And so I think it's a really exciting time. It's also a great amount of responsibility. But also I think, like, when I think about Benevidi's business, I mean, the whole premise of it was to democratize doing good, like to take it from something that was just done by high net worth people and make it so that you could give $2 off every paycheck or just do small acts of kindness. And I do think that technology, it enables us to reach more people. Like we're almost at 8 billion people, I guess, on the planet. And, you know, if you think about if everyone who could just does one small thing, whether it's, gets groceries for a neighbor or gives their time or gives their money, like together it adds up to big impact. And that type of thing and the impact that we can have on the world really is enabled by technology. So to me, that's really exciting. From a diversity perspective, I would say, in the last 18 months since COVID hit, not only are tech companies serving a global market, but the workforce is now global rather than local. So if I look at, being a tech company here in Calgary, we're no longer just competing against other Calgary or Canadian tech companies for software developers. We're competing with Silicon Valley companies that, will pay our folks in US dollars to write code in their basements here in Calgary. Now that creates challenges, but also changing the way we work and how we were able to just flip a switch. I think it creates a lot of opportunity to create more diverse companies, because the way that work was designed before, where we sort of went to offices from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in kind of a robotic fashion, it didn't serve a lot of diverse groups like women with kids at home. And now it's like we've learned that you can just work from anywhere, any time of the day, anywhere in the world. We can be just as productive, if not more productive. And I think that's an exciting evolution. And I hope that, I think it's important for people to come together some of the time, but I hope that we don't go back to the way things were, because I actually think that the way it was designed, it really benefited men, you know, mostly. And so I think we've made a big step forward here, and we sort of have to continue on that path.
Tess, do you have any thoughts there?
Sorry, I really agree with what Kelly was saying about the, you know, the opening up of technology and allowing for more diverse workforce and a workforce in different locations, because the diversity is not just about, you know, gender and race. It really is about, you know, do we have people that grew up in different socioeconomic conditions that are in different physical locations that can bring a different perspective and point of view to the work that you're doing. You know, if you ask me what I'm excited about in terms of where technology is going, well, that, I mean, I really don't want to take up the whole thing, because I could talk for a couple of hours on that, because there's so much exciting going on. But, you know, if I think about where we are from like 5G and edge computing and AI and machine learning and where sensors are going, you know, suddenly we're moving from kind of remote management to remote management opportunity into like full autonomous activity. And that is super exciting, because now we can suddenly enable all kinds of things that we can't even imagine. And for me, what's the most exciting is the things that we don't even know we can do yet. There's a certain amount that we understand we can build with the technology we have today, but we also know that there's, you know, as we start working with some of the smaller firms, we're finding something that we thought we were going to use for a problem A, we're finding we can use it for problem B and problem C and problem E. And to me, that's what's most exciting, because we're starting to unlock the potential of, you know, smaller organizations. We're starting to unlock the potential of small ideas and innovations that are starting to really grow and expand and starting to really become applicable in many different areas. And so for me, when we look at the kind of next revolution that's coming, which is kind of based on this, you know, AI, machine learning, 5G and edge computing, suddenly you see that there's going to be a whole future that we can unlock. And it's really critical that that new future has fingerprints that are different than the fingerprints that unlocked the future, or that unlocked what happened historically. And it has to be a more diverse group of people that are building that future and unlocking that potential, because diverse ideas and diverse people are going to push that technology into different areas and different ideas. They're going to focus the energy and make sure the application can do maybe things that other people wouldn't consider. You know, I see the world from my perspective, a view of how I think things should work. Getting that diverse perspective in to help make sure that it expands out as much as possible is critically important. And I think historically we've had a very homogenous view of what the technology should do and what the priorities for that top technology are. And now we're at a point where I think that we can have a really, really great diverse group of people helping to shape that. And I think that's going to expand it and make it much more impactful and powerful.
Great. We're starting to get some questions in. I want to dive into them. So there's a question here. As a fellow young female leader, how do you overcome the intimidation factor stepping into rooms where there may not have been a lot of other female leaders? So I've got advice there, but I want to hear from all of you. So who wants to start? Wants to jump on that one?
I'd love to hear your advice, Shelley. We've been talking the whole time.
Oh, I know. You know, it's interesting because the stories that you've been telling really resonate. It's like you get to a certain point in your career and I hate to say this, but you just don't care anymore about, you know, what others are thinking of you in that room. And so you're just you in that room. But I think as a young female leader, I think really finding those other leaders that are like you and surrounding yourself with them and their energy. And while they might not be in the room with you, they are with you. So I would seek out those that look like you, that are also leaders, and build that community around you. But I also believe that this younger generation is moving faster than we were, right? So it's kind of like, you know, we talk about the glass ceiling, for example, and I think this young generation is like, what is the glass ceiling? Like, I burst through that. Like, so I think this younger generation has an opportunity to move much faster than we do, and to kind of break down some of these barriers, these self-imposed barriers that we put around us. But I just think you have it in you, you know, trust your voice, you know, be vulnerable, that's okay. You know, we've learned that vulnerability is a really powerful, you know, asset for all of us. But yeah, like, you have to get to that place in your career where, you know, you really just are comfortable with you, and it's going to take some work. But I think, you know, surrounding yourself with leaders is the best way to do it. That's how I did it.
Can I add on that, Shelley? Because it wasn't
For
so long
sure.
ago that I was walking into the rooms feeling like,
I know.
oh my goodness, I don't belong here. And you know, as I was getting into tech, I was learning how to code, and I was going to a lot of the technical meetups. And it always felt like I was the only young woman, the only woman of color. I was non-technical. So then I also felt like that was another mark against me. And it was so easy for the narrative to be, I'm not enough. I don't deserve to be here. I have nothing to offer. And it, you know, I still have moments of that. But one of the things, the techniques that I use is I come back to knowing, like, what are my strengths as a leader? And I think, Tess, you know, you talked about this, about what's your superpower. And when you can articulate and you know what is your superpower, like, I can come back to that. And that is the small voice that tells me I am enough when I've got all the other voices telling me that I'm not. So that's that kind of inner strength where I find my confidence and my courage to be able to step into the room, bring my full authentic self. But I do need to know, oh, these are my 3 key strengths as a leader. And I can come back to that. So there is some self-work that has really helped in my journey.
Love it. Kelly, Tess?
Jump in. You know, Shelley, when you were talking about surrounding yourself with those people that are like you, that is such a powerful thing to do. You know, when I was at the director level, I gathered up a bunch of other women directors at Rogers, and we started a group, and we would meet on a regular basis and talk about the projects we were working on to try and help each other, you know, in different parts of the organization. So when someone said, hey, we've got this project, we need someone to help, we could offer each other up in those instances to try and, you know, boost visibility. And, you know, when someone would talk about a project, we could say, oh, I know who's running that. That's, you know, she's amazing. She does. So we really tried to build into our day-to-day work some support for each other in some different ways. So I think that's critically important. I also think that, you know, you need to find a couple of people in your life that are those cheerleaders, those boosters, those supporters that you can go to when you're having those moments of doubt or you're having that time of concern. You know, we have to be brave a lot of the times as women leaders. And so for me, you know, my spouse is a huge supporter, and he's been one of the biggest boosters for me. You know, whenever I go home and I say, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how we're going to get this done. This project seems daunting. These numbers, I don't know how we're going to get there. You know, he's been the one for me that has said, you'll figure it out. You always do. And I'll have that moment, and I'll pick myself up and I'll keep on going. And so I think it's, you know, finding not just those professional people, but also those, you know, those personal people, those advocates and sponsors for you personally to help boost you up when you need those moments. Because I don't know very many women executives who don't have those moments and have those people that really help them to continue to fight the good fight. Because there are days where it's, you know, it can be pretty tiring, and they're a critical part of the puzzle of being able to keep going.
Yeah, a lot of my list has been covered. I loved what you opened with, Shelley. I feel like it got a lot easier when I just decided I didn't care what people thought of me anymore, but it does take a number of years to build that confidence, right? And I agree, like, I was really lucky. You know, at a point in my career, I had a mentor that was a female CEO, and that really sort of helped me to break out of my shell a bit. And you know, it is uncomfortable. The question was, you know, how do you get over that intimidation factor? You just keep doing it, right? Like there's no magic silver bullet that tomorrow you're going to walk in and feel confident. But a lot of what's been said here resonated, which is like, what are your superpowers, right? So where can you know, you're the smartest person on this subject, you can add a ton of value, and that's where you want your voice heard. And then you sort of build confidence and you also build that respect. And then over time, it just gets easier and easier, but you just have to keep trying. Like that is the only, that's probably the best piece of advice I could offer.
Catherine, any wisdom?
So much has been said. I think I don't need to reiterate. Just all great comments all around. I agree.
Okay, that's great. Madeline, I hope that was useful. You know, do feel free to reach out to any of us if you're trying to build that community of women around you. So please do reach out. We have some more questions here. This one is from Kara. How does Rogers onboard small innovative companies? How long does it take? How long does the sales process take from introduction to project launch? So obviously that question is for you, Tess. Do you want to take that?
So we love meeting small companies. We love meeting small businesses that have an innovative solution. As long as the solution is kind of market ready, that's when we're most excited. So when you have a product that's a real offering, a real product, reach out, get in touch with me. I've got a team of people, and we assess products and bring them on. It can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, depending on you know, the size of the offering and the complexity. But yeah, it's an area we're very interested in. We're bringing on a lot of partners at the moment and building them into our ecosystem of offering. And we're super excited about, you know, specifically, we've done a lot of work out in Western Canada, working with, you know, UBC and working with the city of Kelowna, doing proof of concepts and building up. And we've been working with incubators and accelerators. And it's super exciting to see all of the great ideas that are being developed. And we're really excited to help those small organizations scale.
Excellent. Mary has a question. Did any of you experience major shifts in your career, seeing how quickly technology is changing the world, but we all have to become more adaptable? But how do we do that? So who would like to take that question? Any takers?
I've continuously pushed myself out of my comfort zone. Every time I start a new job, it seems to be in a totally different industry or type of organization. And I go in it thinking, oh, this is amazing. And then I have a few weeks of imposter syndrome and think, what the heck have I just done? This is completely insane. I don't know what's happening around me. And I think my advice is to learn. So you need to inform yourself. You need to, even if, as we said before, sometimes you may not have, you know, all the skills needed, and perhaps you're not, you know, you don't need to be a perfect technologist to understand your role, but you should surround yourself, of course, with people that will help you out, that help inform you and educate you, so that you have enough knowledge to feel comfortable in that space, and then focus on the things that you're really, really good at. Don't let yourself be inhibited by that which you don't know, because everything can be learned to a certain extent.
Excellent. There's a follow-up question here about superpowers. Kylie, how did you all find your superpowers, and what are they each for you? Okay. Do you want to take that one, Kylie?
Yeah, I don't know what the other panelists or even you, Shelley, how you found yours, but I was very lucky to work with some leadership coaches earlier in my career, and I still work with leadership coaches. How I found them was really looking at, you know, what are the things I love to do? Where do I really thrive? What comes easy and naturally to me? And so my 3 superpowers are, one is sparkle. It's kind of like the energy I bring into an interaction that builds excitement in the people around me. And that's helped me build the Chic Geek community and the Chic Geek team. A second is my ability to put like theory into practice. I'll read the introduction of a book and I'm already starting to implement things and try them out. And then lastly, it's my question asking and my listening. So I create space for others to find solutions and I invite them along for the journey. And so those are my superpowers, but I would love to hear what other folks have done.
wants to jump in? Okay.
I don't know if this is a superpower, but you know, one sort of bit of advice that I give people earlier in their careers is like, you can sort of make it to like a manager level based on your technical skills. You know, how good are you at what you do? And then when you're looking to go beyond that, you know, director, VP, C-suite, it's all about people. Like it's not, it's like 80, 90, maybe 99% people. And, you know, very, you know, yeah, what you know is important, but it's really all about like relationship building the best teams, getting the best out of people. And so I'm not sure if it's a superpower or not, but I think probably throughout my career, I just realized that you know, my technical ability was a lot less important than that skill of just like building great teams and inspiring people to do their best work and you know, helping them to believe that anything is possible. So perhaps my superpower is just energy and optimism now that I'm thinking about it, but I hadn't really thought about it for today. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. We're all going to walk away knowing what ours are. Tess, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so for me, I completely agree, you know, that as you get more senior, that the people become so much more important. The leadership, being able to listen and hear people and make space for others becomes so critically important. So for me, people is definitely, you know, part of my superpower area. But the other one that I bring, excuse me, the other one that I bring is just getting shit done. And that's also an incredibly important superpower to bring, to be able to take an idea and actually get into market, take an idea, get it developed, take an idea and deliver the results. And so that those are my two kind of superpowers that I, you know, put the cape on in the morning when I go to work. Those are the two that I'm really relying on.
Catherine, you want to jump in on that?
Again, I reiterate, I think communication and being able to relate and empathize with those around you is incredibly important if you want to be a good leader, a good person in general, not just a leader in an organization. So I think I have that superpower, also the ability to connect the dots and network outside of my space and understand how that could tie back into my business or my mission. Doing that and kind of understanding networks and connectivity is what I'm quite good at.
That's great. That's excellent. If I was to chime in on myself, and that's why I always like moderating panels versus actually being in a panel. But I think for myself, it's the ability to see what's coming next, and then trying to understand, well, where is a practical start in there? So I do have a problem where I like to start companies and, you know, begin that innovation. And so I'd say that's probably my superpower, and like just changing the status quo, being an activist every day. And so in some strange way, that's pretty easy to bring into a room, right? Because you're there not to be part of the group think, but to challenge the group think. So I really like that idea of a superpower and bringing it into the room. That's powerful. Kelly, there's a question here for you. How did you move your company from revolutionary idea to prototype in the early stages? Did you self-fund development? And I think this question, it's interesting for you in the way that, and you reminded me of it on one call that we were on. You're like, Shelley, I wasn't the entrepreneur, but you're the builder, you're the leader. So do you want to talk a little bit about the early days of Benevidi and maybe your role in making that happen?
Yeah, so sorry to disappoint Kara, who asked this question, but I'm not the founder. So Benevidi's been around for 13 years and I've been a part of it for the last 3. And, you know, even if, as I look at the sort of the 3 tech companies that I've been with in my career, I've always been involved in that building stage. So I'm not sure I have the guts to do what Shelley and others on this call do and, you know, actually start something nothing. But the value I add, I think, is scaling and building them into larger businesses. And I've been lucky enough now that all three companies I've been part of have hit unicorn status. So perhaps there's something there that I'm apparently okay at doing, but didn't ever have the guts to found my own company. It is, having been through, a couple of founder transitions, that is an interesting stage for a business though. And how do you, keep those things that the founder instilled and keep the entrepreneurial spirit and the parts of the culture that are really special and brought the company to a certain place, but also continue to evolve, because what gets you to 100 million of revenue isn't what's getting you to $1 billion. And it's really hard because the company outgrows people. And so there's going to be great people there that started the business. They were there from day one. And you have to inevitably, bring in some folks from the outside to take it to that next phase. So that's more of sort of the phase that I've lived through, Kara, if you want to chat more about that.
Yeah, and if I think back to the beginning of Benevidi, because Brian and I were, entrepreneurial allies way back when. That road to financing was always a really challenging one. Right? You were always raising money, just like you were always selling your product. And so I think going back to Kara's question, it's like, yes, there was some self-funding involved for sure, but there was also, this constant need to raise money. And I think, Benevidi needed that capital to scale, right?
Yeah, so Benevidi was really funded by our founder, Brian de Lottenville, and his family and friends up until 2015. So Benevidi made it through 7 years without, taking on PE or venture funding. And then obviously we've had a lot of, funding in the last 6 years to grow to where we are. So yes, it was very much self-funded by, the founder literally writing personal checks to pay payroll and such in those early years. So lots of great stories there.
Yeah, and that is an experience that many of us share, absolutely. Bronwyn has a question. Do your companies have an ERG for women, or have you participated in one? How would you comment on the importance of ERGs for women in tech? And I actually don't know what the acronym ERG stands for. Does anybody know what that stands for?
It's an employee resource group.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah,
Take it.
So at Benevidi, we have a number of ERGs, such as, a Black Employees Network. We have an ERG that spun up around the anti-Asian hate crimes. We certainly have women in leadership groups. We certainly have women in leadership groups as well. And so I think they're really important, not just for women in tech, but for all equity seeking groups. And probably the biggest value I think we get at Benevidi is that it's an opportunity for all of us to learn. Like we get, our ERGs are quite active. And so they often host like panel discussions and they talk about their real lived experiences, and like hundreds of people will join, right? And I feel like I learn something and I get educated, every time. And so I think whether it's for women or for other groups, it's a big part of our culture.
Jess, do you also have the same at Rogers?
I can jump in just to give a quick moment on the Rogers ERGs. They're also very active, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the Rogers, the Rise for Women program, is that there's a mentoring group and mentoring session. So they do a number like one-on-one mentoring. They do group mentoring, and so they also spend a lot of time on networking across the organization. I mean, it's a very large organization, so 26,000 employees nationwide. So to really give an opportunity for people to connect in different parts of the organization, across different business units, across different types of role types. And so that's been, I think, a very helpful group that have really been promoting the needs of different organizations and different employee pockets across the team.
We've got the questions. If there's more, keep them coming. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here this morning and this afternoon for you, Catherine. Is there any other topics that we want to cover? Is there anything that's kind of burning inside of your organization around the topic that we're talking about that you want to share a perspective or get a discussion point going on? I just want to make sure that you have a platform to share the point of view on your side. I mean, I think, you know, one of the things I could maybe just speak for the 51 right now. You know, obviously, we're a company that's led by 2 white women, 3 white women co-founders, and we have implemented what's called a community council to drive diversity and inclusion across our community and our company and our portfolio and where our capital comes from. And so that's been a really practical implementation for our organization. And because we're community-based, it really made sense to set up a community council. And I'd just love to hear from each of you on what are you doing really practically speaking, not just from an internal perspective, but from an external perspective to make sure that we're driving that diversity and equity and inclusion in your company in regards to where your business is going or the innovation that you are developing. Is there any kind of good examples out there that you want to share?
I can jump in here. I'll use my previous job since it's just 8 weeks ago that I left, but we built something quite great that I'm proud of. So I used to work at Factory Berlin, which is essentially the largest community of innovators in Europe. So it's a membership model. We have physical spaces, so co-working spaces, and a vast network of I think 4,700 members. And when I started, we were 900 members. So we grew really well and physically and digitally over the last 3.5 years. But the problem we were seeing within our community, but the German ecosystem as a whole, and it's not just Germany, it's the globe, that there were too few female founders. So in Germany, it's just under 16% of companies started by women are founded by one female founder. And the numbers of diverse VCs are abominable. It's a totally dire and sad landscape. So 3 years ago we said we have to make a dent in on this. We have to do something. We can't just watch from the sidelines, complain, take part in all the surveys, lament, and tweet about it. We're gonna have to take action. So we started a program called Stealth Mode, which is specifically addressed at female, non-binary, underrepresented founders, giving them the opportunity for mentorship. Most importantly, though, access to network, because of what we're seeing here, and I think it's a global phenomenon, is that these individuals don't have the same access to resources than their male counterparts. They're not getting access to these business networks, to the angel networks, to mentorship, etc. So we built this program specifically for that, and now we're in our 4th iteration. So it's our 4th cohort that we just launched at the beginning of this week. We now have brought 45 individuals through the program. Not all of them have continued on their path, but they've made immense learnings for themselves, and they've built their network, which will arguably outlast any business model anyway. So it's something I'm incredibly proud of. And I would my advice out there for those that are, regardless of where you are, is find those networks. There are a lot of great programs out there, whether it's within corporations or within economic development or at universities. There's all kinds of programming and mentorship available out there to get you farther. And I just think it's all about a question of finding them and immersing yourself in those communities to build out that network.
Kylie, you want to build on that?
I think, I like all the things Catherine was saying. For us at SheetGeek, we understand that the journey for diversity and inclusion can often feel very overwhelming for companies. It's kind of this extra thing that, you're trying to think about and move forward. And, we understand that it's a journey that you choose to step on. And it's not always about the big gestures, but sometimes it's about the really small moments. So an example of how we're really committed to building diversity at Chic Geek is, when we do meetings with external folks that require any kind of brainstorming, we set the ground rules. It feels elementary, but it actually helps create space and invite people to bring their full selves, and it reduces a lot of fear around participation. We open every internal meeting with value stories, and this is an opportunity to share personal or professional experiences and challenges that relate to the Chic Geek values. And by just creating that space for personal connection in a day that can be jammed with meetings that are back to back and it's all about getting things done, helps our team really jive, especially because we're all remote. And we work to spotlight each other. So even, in a digital meeting or maybe in a panel, it might be, maybe I'll pass it on to Tess after this to see what she says, but really inviting the participation of other folks, making sure that all voices are heard around the table. So I think those are some small actions that we can all take away and start to implement. So Tess, I'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, it's when I think about my experience at Rogers, and when I think about what the Rogers team is doing. So one, there's a lot of focus, obviously on internal. It's a large organization. It's a large corporate organization. So there are areas where we're really trying to dig into and try and really help make sure that we get the representation at all levels that really reflect, where we are as Canadians and where we are as society. And there's still some work that we need to do there. There's a lot of really great programs to try and help different equity deserving groups advance within the organization. And they are really starting to make room for some real conversations about what that experience is like. And so that for me has been really interesting over the past couple of years. I think one of the things that COVID did is really start to force organizations to understand, the full lives and the full people that come to work every day. And so when your kid walks into the middle of the meeting, when you're presenting to the CEO, you can't pretend the kids don't exist, right? I can pretend the kids don't exist when I go into work, but it's really hard for me to pretend the kids don't exist when they're actually physically in the frame and coming into meetings. Or, I had one where one of my kids, cut herself just a little bit while making a sandwich at lunch while I was working, and the screaming, and everybody was like, everyone jumped to attention because they could see that there was a need that overrode the business at that particular moment in time. So I do think that this unlocking of, the whole self and the whole people coming into work and people understanding the different lives, like we've never seen each other's lives in the way that we have over the past 2 years. We're seeing people's houses, we're seeing people's families, we're seeing people, where they are today, right now. And so that's been, I think that impetus has really forced us to start having conversations about what that means for different people and what that means for their experiences in the organization. So we've had some really interesting, we call them at Rogers Safe Talk sessions, where we allow employees to talk about their lived experience as, people of color, or, I did one about women and talked about some of my experiences as a woman about, the unconscious bias that I've experienced, some of the gender deafness that I've seen and that others have seen. And it just really drives a conversation about what that really looks like for people, and also then what people can do when they see it happening. Because I know for me, again, I can see the gender bias in the room because I've experienced it. It was harder for me to see bias against people of color because that's not something I've experienced before. But as soon as someone was talking about what that looked like to them, it was like, wow, okay, now I understand. And now when I'm in the room and I see something like that happening, I can actually intercede. I can step in and say, wait a second, that, no, we're not going to do that. Or here's what we're going to do, because now I can see it. And I think for a lot of people, they don't know what's happening. They don't believe it's happening sometimes, but even if they believe it's happening, they don't know what it looks like or what that feels like. And so they find it difficult to step in. And so I've really started to see a step up of allyship, because I think a lot more people understand what those biases look like and how they show up in day-to-day interactions. And that to me has been really very exciting.
Yeah, just building on what Tess said, I think sometimes we talk about, diversity and equity and inclusion as if that's one thing. It's three different things. And, a big realization for us at Benevidi was we're super diverse on paper. It's just, our exec is diverse by sort of every measure, and as is the company, but it didn't mean that our culture was always inclusive or equitable. And so we've started to focus on each of those pillars, separately and together, I guess, if you will. And because, like you said, allyship, I'm seeing that trend as well, but that's what drives inclusivity and training people on what inclusive conversations actually look like. It's part of training your leaders, and it's development, and then equity gets at things like, are you ensuring that promotions and pay levels, you don't have those gaps based on gender and ethnicity and things like that. And I think sometimes we talk so much, I find, in Canada about diversity on boards, and I actually think getting diversity, a stat on a board is the easy thing. It's way harder to get it in the exec team and throughout your company, but we think about it mostly as a number. The hard part is inclusivity. Like, inclusivity and equity are hard, and I think we kind of sometimes focus too much on one and don't think enough about the other pieces that go along with that.
I love that. Thanks, Kelly. That was really, really important, because I kind of put all three of those words together. And now I'm starting to put the J in front of it too. So the innovator in me. And I loved some of the comments, and it goes back to what you were talking about, Catherine. It's like, we have to be, the change we want to see. We have to be the solution that we want to see. And again, I think, the 51 is really a good example of that, right? 90% of our capital is women's capital in our fund, which is kind of unheard of, right? So that means that the capital is different. So we're really trying to change where the capital is coming from, so that, we are investing in different things. And then I think there's another question or comment here around, women's leadership in tech. And Catherine, you talked about 16% in Germany. And I don't know if that was a current stat, but in Alberta, we're at 28%. 28% of tech companies are either led or co-led by women. That's twice the national average. So there's still so much opportunity and so much upside for our participation. We're almost at time. I just want to give all of you a minute to say any wrap up or closing words, or any other advice for women, perhaps, women or young girls that are still in school. So let's just hand it over to you and leave those parting thoughts with you.
Wow, no pressure to end it on an inspiring note. Okay, I guess off the top, I would say, you can do anything. Don't let anyone tell you or make you believe what you can and cannot do. I spent right up until February 1st, where I took over as CEO of Benevidi, telling myself I was never going to be a CEO. Because I didn't like being in the spotlight, don't love the public speaking. I kind of considered myself I just execute the crap out of everything. And so I'm happy being number two, and I'm really good at that. And then I stepped into it, and like magically, I love it. So it's like, don't limit yourself. Don't let anyone make you believe you can't do it. You can really do anything. And I think, tech is a super exciting career path, and you get a lot of growth, and you get a lot of challenge, and you get a lot of global exposure, and all of those things. And so I just would say, go for it.
Yeah, it's Tess. I'll jump right on that, because my parting words are always just be brave. If you're looking at your next job and the next job doesn't slightly terrify you, it's probably not the right next job for you. You should always be going for things that, stretch you just enough, hopefully not to break you, but, you have to be brave. You have to try the things, and there's going to be so many things that you try that once you try them, you'll figure out you're good at them and you can do them and you love them. And, I have an entire career that is amazing because I was willing to try a bunch of things that I never would have expected if I put on paper would be the kind of work that I would do and the kind of work that I would love. So I would encourage everybody to just reach far, stretch yourself, and be super, super brave, because it's an exciting industry and there's lots to be done and there's lots of opportunity.
Yeah, just continuing that perfect flow. Be open-minded, be curious, work hard, learn as much as possible. But also, if it's not a good fit, if the organization you're in is not a good fit, or the environment you're in, you're not comfortable with, you don't have to slog it out to prove it to anyone. Like, you should be in the right place for, again, the most part of your waking hours. So, you know, go at it with as much energy as possible. And I hope it always works out for you. And if not, don't be afraid to cut the cord.
I think that ties into mine here, which is to be intentional. So to always take the time, carve it out, to know where you're coming from, what matters to you, what you want, to not be looking always outward for those measures of success, because I think we all find our own path differently, and it's up to you to kind of say what that path looks like. So be intentional.
That's great. Thank you all so much. It was a ton of fun to hang out with you here this morning, and I loved getting to know you, Catherine and Tess. Kylie and Kelly, thank you as always for bringing it first thing in the morning. So Jen, I think we're handing it off to you now.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, everybody. Shelley for moderating, and Kelly and Tess and Kylie and Catherine. It's a long time entrepreneur myself, working in, you know, non-traditional industries for women, never having a female client, never having like a female role model until I was probably in my late 40s. So many of these things resonated with me. So thank you for sharing. You know, even just how you all got into tech, and the paths you've chosen to begin with are really about, you know, fast pace and being in that place of uncertainty. And that's really about embracing risk. And I just think we all have this quiet courage that we bring. And when you combine that with the resilience that was, you know, just this thread through every conversation here, and we do that, you know, day after day after day, that becomes confidence. And like you said, Shelley, you know, like, we end up just really not giving a shit about anybody else. And I mean, about who else is in the room, but not caring about you know, like stealing ourselves into that. So thank you. Yeah. And I think, you know, I have 2 adult daughters, and I think that, you know, telling them, show up, speak up, don't ask for permission. And they're like, yeah, of course, Mom, of course, that's what we do. And so I do feel like our younger generation is way farther ahead certainly than I was when I was in my 20s. So thanks again. I would also like to thank Senator Doug Black for kicking off this event. And also to, of course, all of you. We'd also like to thank the City of Calgary and Alberta Innovates that are our supporters and backers for Platform Calgary. The next GCT is going to be in November, so please stay tuned. You'll be getting something in your inbox about that. Spread the word. And yeah, we're going to have a networking room opening at 9:30, and I think we're going to be putting that into the chat. And please stick around if you can.